Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Tuesday topic. I am Darren Dunstan. I organize the Tuesday topic.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. So today we have a great workshop on teaching leadership with Pat Oth and Girish Kamal. We may have some more folks joining us online. I just want to take a second to let you know about the next few that we have coming up with Tuesday topics. We have next week, we have Go Global, Travel Abroad, the Dean's Global Scholarship, Becoming a CNHD Global Scholar, and more. The week after that, we have the second discussion of our And Discuss America Inside Out with Katie Couric. This one is going to focus on Season 1, Episode 6, The Age of Outrage. Week after that, we have the ins and outs of a seemingly easy cancer, thyroid cancer. And then the last one in April, Tuesday, April 30th, is effective interdisciplinary communication promoting patient care. So please go online to our website, register for those events. It would be great to see more people, and not just this, but lots of the other events too. Great. So that's it for me. Take it away. Yeah, I got it. Great.
Hello.
So I want to introduce myself to you. My name is Pat Oth. I'm the Department Chair and Program Director here at the Physician Assistant Program.
I'm Tango. I'm faculty in the Creative Arts Therapies Department.
I know we have a large audience, which is great, but maybe if you just talk about the different professions that are here. We really would like to emphasize how this is an interprofessional Tuesday topic. So we got the PA profession.
Yeah.
Yay! What other professions do we have here? Sean. Yep. And what other departments and professions?
Nutrition.
Oh, excellent. Stella Volpe's group. Excellent. Other?
Creative arts.
Excellent. Great. And we got some creative arts back there too.
And
Perfect.
nursing.
Oh,
Yeah.
St. Joanne?
And rehab sciences as well.
Excellent. Good.
And also for the folks who are online, if you want to speak up or make a point or contribute at any point, just unmute yourself and speak up. But the rest of the time, if you wouldn't mind keeping your microphones muted, that would be great. All right? Ready? All right, so before we start, I thought we'd give you a quick introduction on ourselves and why we are doing this. So my leadership roles have lately been in the communities of interest to me. So the community where I live, the Upper Dublin School District, where I serve as advisor to our district leadership. I also served in leadership roles in my professional organization, previously as research committee chair and now on the board of directors, and most recently as a member of the faculty senate for CNHD, representing CNHD. Those are sort of the roles I'm coming from, and in my previous position at Temple University, I did a lot of research on leadership, especially the role of the arts and how that impacts and can enhance leadership. So we talk about some of that. But I did want to give you some context of where I'm coming from, and the lessons that I've learned are from these contexts of practice.
So I'm an accidental leader. I so did not want to be a leader. I'm the department chair for the PA program and the program director for the physician assistant program. My dissertation, when I got my PhD in education, part of it was on servant leadership. So I hope what you come out of this talk is this is really about a conversation about leadership styles. And what we hope you will take away from this conversation is the different leadership styles that we as healthcare providers can serve and how we can impact at the community level, the state level, and the national level.
So to start, if you wouldn't mind throwing out some words, and there's no right or wrong here, we're just trying to get a sense of what do you think of? What do you think of when you think of a leader? What are some attributes that come to mind? Vision. Guidance. Guidance. Being a listener. Listener, very nice.
Support.
Support. Very good.
Good job.
Motivator. Innovation. Advocate.
Wow. Good.
So hold on to these words, and as we are talking and as we share some of our perspectives, think about what are the kinds of behaviors or attributes that are salient in your mind for kind of a template of a leader. How much of that relates to who you are, and how much of that might perhaps change as you listen to us today. All right, so keep these words in mind as you listen to us. We hope to finish around 11:50, maybe leave about 10 minutes. Yeah.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about servant leadership. So I'm a physician assistant. My clinical background is in emergency medicine and orthopedics. I want to give you a 30-second glimpse as to how I became a leader. I was very comfortable being an orthopedic PA. I was asked to give a lecture about orthopedics here in the PA program, and so then I assumed a faculty position. I was a faculty member for about 6 years, and I was taking a flight from Philadelphia to Seattle with the then program director, Sherry Stolberg, and late at night, she leaned over in the plane. The seat was here, I was here, and Sherry was here, and she leaned over. Now again, I'm 6 years into the job as a junior faculty member, loving my job, loving teaching orthopedics, loving teaching emergency medicine, really didn't want to do anything else. She leans over and asks if I would be interested in being the program director. Well, I had diarrhea for 2 weeks because there's nothing more than I wanted. I didn't want a leadership position. I truly didn't. I really was very comfortable in my role as a faculty member, leading students, leading the community. But over the 2 weeks thinking about the decision to become the program director, the driving force was serving the mission of the program and serving the students. That was the driving force for me to say I would accept the role as a program director. So I just got a couple of slides to talk about servant leadership, because I do think that's one of the leadership styles we as all healthcare providers share. So this is a wonderful quote. I'm not going to read it for you, but it's a quote that I live by and I use in a course that I teach the PA program. What I like best about this quote is the end. If you seek enlightenment for yourself to enable you to serve others, you are with purpose. And I do believe all of us healthcare providers are with purpose when we're seeking enlightenment for our patients, and as faculty members when we're seeking enlightenment for our faculty. So like every really good leadership theory, there's a person who's thought of it. And what I like most about Robert Greenleaf, believe it or not, Robert Greenleaf came from the business world. He was an AT&T business manager, and he talked about servant leadership as a way to better respond to customer service. So we'll have these slides available for you to look at later. These are 3 pivotal essays that he wrote, and that was the beginning of the servant leadership theory. So servant leaders it's the philosophy that supports people who choose to serve first and then lead as a way of expanding service to individuals and institutions. Servant leaders are individuals who do not hold a formal leadership position. So that means that everybody in this room at some point could be a servant leader. Doesn't mean you have to be an appointed program director or department chair, but yet you are a servant leader in your role as a healthcare provider. We encourage and collaborate for trust, foresight, listening, and we heard listening before as an attribute of the servant leader. And the servant leadership is one model that can shift traditional ideas of leaderships in organizations to prepare organizations to face the challenges of an uncertain future. So I've got 2 slides to just help you to understand how servant leadership is different than traditional hierarchy-based leadership. Have we all been in positions where there's a hierarchy-based leadership, where the leader that we're reporting to has complete control over information, has complete control of people being promoted? So I wanted to highlight for you that the hierarchy-based leader is an individual with a personal drive to achieve top position. These are individuals who are highly competitive, use personal power, fear, and intimidation to get what he or she wants, and focuses on fast. In comparison, the servant leader is one who begins with the desire to serve others from any place in the organization. So that does mean when you're in a hospital, that unit clerk, the hospital, the housekeeping, anybody in that organization serves the organization and serves as a servant leader. A servant leader operates in a highly collaborative, interdependent manner, which works very well as the interprofessional team, uses personal trust, respect to build bridges, focuses on gaining understanding and input from all parties, all stakeholders. And what I like best about servant leaders, maybe because I'm a procrastinator, is that slower sometimes is better. Slower sometimes is better. Not making those fast decisions as you might see, in a hierarchy-based. The hierarchy-based leadership individual controls information in order to maintain power. Have we ever been in positions where we're not the keeper of the information, but the person who has the most information at the table is the one that has the most power? The servant leader is just the opposite. The servant leader wants to share the information. The hierarchy-based leader spends more time telling and giving orders than listening, derives a sense of confidence and personal worth from building his or her own talents or CV or resume. The servant leader shares the big picture, listens deeply, respectfully, derives a sense of fulfillment from mentoring, coaching, growing collaboratively. It develops this trust amongst its stakeholders. So the servant leader begins with the natural feelings that one wants to serve. So my natural feelings to assuming the role of a program director was clearly because I wanted to serve the students. We are a mission-based program here at the PA. The PA program is mission-based. Our mission is to serve the underserved and to educate primary care PAs and to tell the world about PAs. That was the reason why I accepted the position as a program director, because I wanted to serve the mission and I wanted to serve the students in the community. The servant leader is sharply different from the person who is a leader first, who the latter chose to serve after leadership is established. And the servant leader deliberately chooses to put others' needs, goals, hopes over their own so as to transform others into a more productive, effective individuals. So these are the kinds of questions you might want to ask yourself to see if you subscribe to the servant leadership. Are those are others people's highest priorities needs being served? Do those being served grow as persons? Do our patients grow as persons? Do the people we report to grow as persons? Do the people around the table grow as persons? Do those being served become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more like themselves become servant? What is the effect on the least privileged in society? Servant leaders think about the least privileged in society, individuals who are marginalized. And will the benefit, or at least not be further deprived, those individuals? And my last slide about servant leadership are some characteristics that I would just like you to think about. So these are a cluster of characteristics that describe the servant leader. The servant leader is a very deep listener, both actively and passively. The servant leader works to have healing and spiritual recovery. Servant leaders look to have the whole person grow as an individual. Servant leaders are altruistic. They often gravitate to a leadership position because they want to help other individuals. The servant leader, stewardship. Stewardship talks about bringing somebody along who may not be in a formal leadership position, but putting them into an informal leadership position. What I like best about the servant leader is building communities and the commitment of growth individuals. Servant leaders are individuals who want to see the whole organization grow, not just their own personal self-growth, okay? And servant leaders have the foresight to sort of predict what might be happening in the future to help other individuals avoid that. Does that make sense to you guys so far? Perfect. I kind of love it.
So any questions for that at this point? All right, so thank you. I feel lots of leadership, so I'm happy to learn today as well. There are many, many theories of leadership. So there's a whole range that you can choose from, and I'll share some more of those and see which one really speaks to you, based on your work, based on your own sort of personality and inclinations. So I love this slide because I feel that this is often how we emerge, right? We are trained in a lot of content, but the world doesn't really operate like that. So how do we go from being students or being scholars to being leaders in whatever community we might choose to be part of? So maybe we could do a quick kind of run through. What are some roles or positions you've held? And it could be formal or informal. It doesn't have to be like a formal leadership position. Yeah.
Leading groups as a dancer.
That's very nice. Yeah.
Department chair.
Chair. Okay.
In my church, I've been a leader in groups.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Anybody in the community? Good.
professional organization I've been both a representative, like an assembly delegate, and an executive board member, so representing in different capacities.
As a program developer in 2 hospitals.
So some of the, we'll get to like a framework for this, but a lot of leadership really is about service. It's really about working hard to serve the communities. And this is an important shift. We often think of leaders as, you know, people in power or positions of responsibility, but really it's serving whatever group that they are. It's a lot of work, and mostly it's work. It's not as much power and responsibility as it is work. Would you agree?
Definitely, yeah.
A leader's real authority is the power you voluntarily give him or her. You grant him or her this authority not with resentment or resignation, but happily. So think about that in the context of what Pat just shared about servant leadership. Who do you give that leadership role to? Again, think about people that you consider leaders in your life, right? Most likely, these are the people who take care of you in some way, professionally, personally, in the community. When you give this authority to someone, you're saying, you know what, I trust you. I trust you to take charge and lead us, whatever community that might be, to a place that might be better for all of us. It's not, you don't get this authority just with a title.
What I like best about what you just said was, as a leader, you could have individuals around the table. Someone might be the head of the table, might be the program director, but during any one particular conversation, that leadership role could change to someone who is the point person, the person who has the authority, the expertise. So as leaders, we have to learn how to shift roles away from being a formal leadership position to an informal leadership position.
Okay, so some additional theories of leadership. There's the laissez-faire. This is someone who is very hands-off. And you can all think of people, you know, fit each of these models. Hands-off, do your own thing. There's the autocratic, which just sounds a lot like the hierarchical model that someone who is very clear on lines of reporting and who is in charge. Someone who's participative is a lot more inclusive. Someone who's transactional will often think about, all right, I do this for you, and then you do this for me in return. Very much in terms of, you know, favors and responses. Transformational leadership often is focused on an understanding of systems in society, differences in power and privilege. There's the authentic style, which is focused on being transparent, sincere, and honest. And then there's the aesthetic leadership style, which I'll talk about a little bit more, influenced by the senses, emotions, and interactions, and awareness of the environment and the dynamics of interaction, human interaction.
During the course of your career, you're going to subscribe to several different leadership positions. You tend to gravitate to a particular one, so I gravitate to the servant leadership. But in the hospital, when there's a patient with a code, which leadership style do you think we're going to subscribe to? In charge, who's going to go through the ACLS protocol. So what we would like you to explore is that you are going to have different leadership styles depending upon the situation.
Exactly right.
So there are certain times when you do want it to be participatory, when there's change.
And in all those choices that you just highlighted, again, what is the key decision? It's what is in the service of the community, right? So when you are thinking about the community beyond yourself, it's really not about you. You will make a choice that hopefully will be results. Okay, so transformative leadership, again, think about all the challenges that are faced by different individuals. And yes, in many ways we are all equal, and yet in many ways people's journeys are different. So sensitive to that. And when might you be aware and sensitive in your role to these differences in backgrounds of people who work with or lead? Okay, so aesthetic leadership is born from the arts. The idea that there's a lot that we can learn about each other and support and develop each other through a sensitive understanding of human interactions and group dynamics. Right, so let's see. So this was a grant that we did from the US Department of Education on how school leaders in high needs urban schools can be
Really have to pay attention to what each other are doing
very nice.
very quickly.
Very quickly, very attentive. Yeah, what else?
It also seems that there's one person who's the leader, but that leader has to respond to their partner. Yeah, like very reciprocally. Yeah.
Reciprocity.
Yeah.
Reciprocity. Has anyone danced the tango here? I know. That lady down there. What else?
Communication.
Communication. Can you do the tango if you are not really attuned to each other? I mean, you could do it, it just wouldn't be that good.
Non-verbal communication.
Yeah.
Specifically, non-verbal communication.
No.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Too. Good point. Yeah.
For it to look right, you have to work as one.
Right.
But it takes two.
It
to
takes
tango.
two.
You can't do it by yourself.
But it has to, and what does it take to look good? What does it take? But the rest of us don't jump up on stage and do that, right? So there's a lot. Let's go to the next slide. So what do we learn from tango? We know that there might be times when you lead, and there might be times when you follow. You're not the expert, right? So an important part of leadership is knowing what you don't know and who might you defer to lead you. It takes planning, preparation, and practice. You have to be reflective and you have to be willing to learn over time. Can you do it without trust? I don't think so. And lastly, that all leadership roles have a performative element. You are being observed. You're always being watched if you are in a leadership role. So kind of be aware of that. Not that you have to be inauthentic, but you have to be aware that you are being observed. Yeah.
Two other things I was thinking about just as a dancer related to this, the idea of creativity and improvisation.
Totally.
That you need to
Right. Yeah.
you're like making it up as you go along, but with some structure.
Right.
Because even though that's choreographed, there is an element of spontaneity and improvisation and creativity.
It's a great comment.
medicine too, though.
Yeah, because we often say fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Have you ever used that saying before?
Yeah.
So, I think as you develop your leadership skills, and we're always developing them, is faking it till you make it is a mantra that I use sometimes. And I'll say it to myself in front of the mirror, sorry guys, before a faculty meeting, because I'm not really quite sure where things are going, but you hope that you trust your group to be able to take you to the right place. That's excellent.
All right, so similarly, we explored mime. And what are some things you learn from mime? You learn that you communicate non-verbally, and you create a vision, like you identified, with nothing. What does a mime do? A mime helps you see a world that doesn't actually exist, simply from their movements and their expression. So a vision is a big part of what a leadership role or a leader provides to the community. And then your body is a source of communication, right? Your nonverbals, how you present yourself, all these are communicating whatever it is that you want to, right? Yep. Lastly, from jazz, what might you learn? You might learn that there are a team of experts. Each of you is really good at one thing, and no one does that better than you. The role of the leader is to help you shine. as a member of that team and to make sure that everyone in your team, in your ensemble, gets their moment to shine, to grow, to develop. And it's not just about one person.
I went to a jazz concert last week, and the musicians introduced themselves, and they all came from a different genre. One was from opera, one was from pop music, and all 5 of them together created beautiful music. But it was interesting how each one had their own genre that they were an expert in, which is similar to what you might have with your leadership team.
And they all agreed to do this, right?
Yes.
There's a shared trust and understanding that, all right, we're coming together from vastly different backgrounds, but we'll make this work.
And a shared appreciation for what somebody else brings to the team. I think one of the greatest leadership skills that I've learned over the years, oftentimes by mistake, is that I don't know it all. And that I have to look at other individuals to be able to help me bring it to the right spot.
Okay, so can you all read this from back there? Just take a moment. These are some of the lessons learned that the people in the study identified. Yeah? Change? So leadership behaviors also have nuance and cultural context. The kind of template or the cultural expectation of leadership behavior differs based on where you might be. So I believe in Japan, showing a toothy grin is not a sign of leadership. Japan, Russia, the expectation is that you would show more calm gravitas. In the US, the expectation is that you would present more as extroverted. And a big toothy grin apparently represents that. There are differences. So think also of the communities that you might work in and what is appropriate or what is considered respectful or safe leadership behaviors, right? Based on the community. Okay, so we developed a framework and we have articles in the back on that round table. There's a range of articles on servant leadership, facilitative leadership.
There's also Macy's undergraduate nursing leadership. So feel free to take that and share with anybody who might be interested in that.
Yeah. So this is a framework we developed for the creative arts therapies. And what we are saying here is that there's really 3 things, ideally, that you should have in your mind in your leadership roles. One, that you're constantly developing yourself, which means you're reflecting on how you're doing things well, where might you improve, how might you gather feedback on your effectiveness. Number 2, you develop others. This is really not just about you. Yes, you want to grow as a team, but you also want to identify what are the strengths and challenges of people that you work with. So supporting those strengths, but also helping people say, what? You can do this better. Others, you would be what would be considered a manager, right? You're focused on yourself, you're focused on others, you do a great job as a supervisor or a manager. What sets a leader apart is that piece around vision. You take these 2 pieces and you add this idea of, all right, where do we want to go? Not just that, all right, this has been handed down to us, but where do we want to go as a group? And how is that evolved over time? We might have a certain mission in 2019, but where do we want to be 10 years from now? And if we can identify that vision, how are we going to get there? What do we need to do now to get to where we want to be? So think of these 3 elements. We identified it really for the creative arts therapies, but I think this applies to all healthcare professions broadly, that if you think of these 3 elements as components of your role, it would be a sort of useful way to think. Yeah?
And as you're developing into your health profession, I would encourage you, when you think about developing yourself, is to identify an individual who could coach you, or who could mentor you, or could give you feedback on your leadership skill sets. And that would be a good, and during the course of your career, you're always going to have some type of coach or mentor, depending on where you are developing.
And this can be formal or informal.
Oh, without a doubt,
right?
yes.
So much so much of mentorship and support is someone like you said who tapped you on the shoulder and said, you know what, I think you'd be really good at this, and you could be that person to someone else too. Right? And many of you have already been in that role. You could be a supervisor of someone who you see potential in. So it's not a question of just waiting till, all right, when I have this title, I'll do all these things. You can do all these things today, and you're probably already doing it for students, for people who mentor, or people who supervise. Yeah. Okay, so some other differences between a boss and a leader. Again, going back to what Pat shared around hierarchical versus service. A boss is someone, again, who is or considers themselves the expert, and yes, someone who depends on authority, whereas a leader is someone who brings a group together. This is where we're going to go together. Yes, I might be in a leadership role, but this is our group venture. You just don't do what I ask you to do, but let's figure this out together. Yeah. Any questions so far? Is all of this making sense? Yeah. Are you finding an approach that kind of speaks to you amongst all these different groups? Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. So I'm Flossie, but I find that my leadership style seems to change. In my role as program director and as like in the class. So it just feels like very kind of flexible, somewhat amorphous. But I guess sort of a question, and this is like a whole different thing, is that I know a few people who have taken on director roles in clinical sites right now, and with two of them, it's become very turbulent in the department. So like transition from one leadership style to another, and when you're the leader taking that on, it's like, how does one do that gracefully without, in one of the departments they're losing people, and so as she hires new people, maybe it'll be better, but how do you deal with some of that tension that comes about because they resent you for being a new leader,
Right.
named leader?
And this is a clinical site?
Yeah, but like in a creative arts therapy.
First one that I'll say.
I can give it a try. So when I was tapped on the shoulder to become a program director, I found myself on the team were the teachers that taught me. So when I went to school, I was now in charge of the faculty who taught me.
Wow.
And I'm all of 33 years old and thinking I know how to conquer the world. And I had no idea how to articulate or talk to those faculty members. I knew I had a deficiency, so I went to the then Dean Donnelly and said, I need a coach. I need a coach to help me how to communicate. And a lot of it was using the right words and having the confidence to be able to share my vision. So it was having a coach, having a clear vision, and having people understand what my vision was. And that created that dialogue. And over the period of months, it created the trust. But it was a trust that I had to earn. It wasn't a trust that was going to be given to me just because I had the title. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
I would also say, Flossie, in this context, the whole listening piece would be really important, right?
Yeah.
What role did they step into? Was this a much loved previous leader, right? Then it's going to take some time for people to know you, to trust you, as with any clinical group that we do. And again, to kind of reflect back on the big picture. Often what you do as a leader is you have a bigger picture of the entire group that you're working with. So why are people leaving? And maybe it's okay for some people to leave.
Yes.
I think, we hold on to this idea of like, oh my God, like retention. You know what, maybe some folks, it's okay.
Yeah.
And then you get new people who might support your vision. But there is going to be some transitional
Yes.
turbulence in some of the person's role, and learning might be in how to manage and support the group through this transition and say, you know what, I got it. I've got this. and I'm here, I'm not gonna leave. I don't know if that's helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I also wonder if the leader, I'm sorry, last thing I'll say, wonder if the leader's vision, like I found this with myself a little bit, is that sometimes I feel more creative with, like when I had some different adjunct was, like who those others were that I was trying to develop, who the staff were.
And I would like to add that if you do find yourself in a
A quote that one of my friends told me, and I remember this every time I get some weird response, is you can control what you say, but you cannot control what people hear. So in our professional organization, we've been going through a lot of churn, and the executive director recently told me, this member sent me this letter and she asked me all these questions and we've been giving the same answers for 2 years, but then she's asking the same questions. And I'm thinking, well, clearly we failed in communication. If we've been saying the same thing for 2 years, but the same questions are coming back to us. So that's a lesson for us, like, wait a second, there's something about our communication strategy that's not working, that people are not hearing what we are trying to say. Yeah? Any questions from the online folks? Anything? I know we like mute and move. Anything?
It's a democratic.
Right? Got a democratic there, yeah. Not right now? So these are some phrases I really like because it's a good reminder. We all make mistakes and it's okay to acknowledge that. You know what? I tried this, it flopped. How might we do this better? I'm thinking of your person. You know what? What did they try? And to be kind of honest and upfront about that, I want to make this work for us as this department. What could we do together? Gathering opinions. You don't know best all the time. One big thing is recognizing good work. It's amazing. Recognition goes a long way. A thank you. You don't have to do a lot. Recognizing what someone did, something extra, something out of the way. That goes a long way. How could we do this better? Think about that framework of 3, developing self, developing others, and visioning. That part of you, the Japanese call it kaizen. I think it's called kaizen, this idea of constant improvement, the idea that, you know what, we could do better. And you don't have to be like, OCD about it, but you can be thoughtful, like, what did I do really well? And how might I improve going forward? And really kind of realizing what are the boundaries of our practice. Yes, we might have this grand vision, but if you don't have the resources and capacity for it, maybe we be realistic about that as well. Okay. All right, so the kind of 3 key elements which we've highlighted. Some great books that I've loved to read. Perhaps you've read some of these as well. One of my favorites is Quiet by Susan Cain, and it is a reaction to this idea that extroversion equals leadership, that you have to be this big, bombastic, charismatic, outgoing person. Actually, no. Introverted individuals, introverted leaders are actually a lot more effective because they listen. They are not performing all the time. Not to diss extroverts, you're cool too. But introverts get a bad rap, as you know, because we tend to be a lot more reflective and observant. And there's room for all kinds of leadership practice.
So I want to tell you a story.
Yeah.
Part of my leadership role was I was the chair of our regulatory body that accredits programs. So we have 30 healthcare professionals around the table, and we're all debating, the accreditation status of these programs. And it was the first time I experienced, debates and how human behavior shapes debates. Who do you think was the most important person in that debate? 30? No. I'm a born comfortable for me. Interestingly, there's physicians, there's PAs, there's public members. The most important person, or the person that we listened to the most, was the one that spoke the least. So when that individual spoke, everybody listened. And oftentimes that person who spoke was able to synthesize the argument or phrase it in such a way that many of the extroverts who just kept on talking really said, that makes good sense. So value your introverts, right?
Thank you for that. So another analogy someone told me was, watch the Godfather movie. How much does the Godfather talk?
Not much.
Not much.
Oh,
and,
really?
and when he does he yell? He talks like this. Really good. So this whole idea of, speaking the most, being the loudest, is not necessarily. Okay. Some great TED Talks. There's a whole playlist if you are so inclined. Different ways, different approaches. One that I like is by Simon Sinek, who talks about the leader being someone who creates a safe environment for you to be and for you to thrive. Especially as healthcare providers, think about what safety means in most of our settings. And safety is not just physical safety, but psychological safety. Can you truly disagree with another member of your team? Does the leader set it up in a way that you can have diverse points of view? It's harder to do than you might imagine. It's much easier to kind of silence voices that are different. But it takes a very capable leader to hold a diversity of voices without people attacking each other. It's very hard to do.
If you want to try that, and if you're leading a group, what I found to be effective to help you move into a safe environment are ground rules. To be able to just say, what are the ground rules that we're going to have in this meeting? How are we going to respect each other? How much time is each individual going to have to speak? But I found ground rules to be a great way to normalize the conversation and to all move us in the right direction.
Okay, some more specific ones. Everything available free on TED. So in summary, these are some things that I have found useful. Just to be curious and be willing to be wrong and be willing to learn. And know that, there's people to support you. So you might have roles and responsibilities, but there's always support if you approach with authenticity and sincerity. There's things you want to do. I bet you there's others who want to do that too. So how might you build a community? How might you build a vision for the things that you might want to impact, right? Think also strategically about which communities do you really want to impact, right? So in my professional organization, there's all these committees and everybody needs, people to do things. And membership committee needs things, governance needs things. Now, you know what? Not my thing. I'm not into governance and all that. Okay, I wouldn't be helpful over there. I'm really interested in research. You know what? I'll serve on the research committee. That's my thing, and that helps me focus, and that helps me invest my time and energy. Someone else who's a lot more outgoing than I am would be great for membership. Call people every day, get them to renew. Not my thing, but definitely someone else's thing. Right? So think about what is it that you really care about, and where might you invest that time and energy. You don't have to be out there doing everything. But what is your one big passion? What is your one vision to impact the world? And kind of focus your energy in that. I think that's it.
Any questions for us, my friends? So what are some takeaway points that we've got a few minutes left. What are some takeaway points that you've learned during this Tuesday talk? Anybody? We're going to look at you until we...
Yeah.
That leadership's fluid.
Yeah. Responsive to the moment, and you could be different things in different groups.
I'm appreciating seeing the layout of, the way different conceptualizations of leadership and thinking about the fact that they can be useful in different situations.
Excellent. Good. I learned as a healthcare provider, I serve in a servant leadership role or a leadership role within the community. Even just serving my patients or serving the community, that, if there's enough of us with the same vision, we can have a powerful impact on the community. And it's sort of a movement.
I think so I recently finished my doctoral degree, and I haven't had a ton of maybe formal opportunities to be a leader. So it's more just thinking about how I can act as a leader in my day-to-day career development and what opportunities are ahead of me to also be a leader and develop those skills. But I think it's hard as a student to really be a leader.
But then you could have student leadership roles, right? So May, I know you're GSA, VP,
Vice President of Academic Affairs, right?
So there's
Seminars together. So that's a really great way for students to really try on these leadership roles.
Do you want to share something from your experiences, something you've learned?
Well, I've learned a lot. So coming into the role, I don't have a lot of administrative background and skills. So just learning, working with such a diverse population, the board of the Graduate Student Association right now, like with engineers, with physicists on the board, and it's took me a long time to see what I can bring to the table, and that's what I'm learning from this whole process.
And what did you learn? What did you bring?
Communicate. Well, that's a really loaded question. Communication skills. Yeah. Really listen and synthesize. Yeah. I think that's
Very nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
No difficult.
Yeah.
I think May makes writes a really concise email ask.
I learned a lot about writing emails.
I mean, if I may take advantage of the fact that we have people here in this room, I know you're seeking judges for the DES
Yes, for the Jackson
conference. Plug it away.
Yes. So if you see a solicitation email for the Jackson Emerging Scholars Conference, click the link and sign up to be a judge. Next week.
There you go.
Thursday.
Yeah.
I have a question, a takeaway. The summary is that leaders develop themselves, develop others, and have vision. I've been able to see both of you develop others and see your vision, but I don't always see behind the curtain, see how you actively develop yourselves. What are your go-to strategies?
Together with my kids. No, I think identifying what is helpful. So for me, I need a lot of alone time and quiet time to do my own thinking, reflection, creative work. That's where I do a lot of my processing. So I make sure that I have time for myself. Reflection is a big part of it. Reaching out to people I trust. So one thing I find really hard is negative feedback. So if you get and if you're in academia, you're getting that on a daily basis, like some manuscript that's rejected, some grant that's rejected. I was telling someone 75% of the time I'm kind of licking my wounds about something, right? So having a strategy around that. All right, if I get negative feedback, I'm not going to react right away. I'm going to go do something else to muster up the strength to respond to it. And very often it's good feedback. It's feedback to help me improve in some way. So just having that mindset, you know what, negative feedback is going to come. I'm going to be receptive to it, and I'm going to grow from it. Challenging situation. Recently, I had a bit of a conflict with one of my colleagues, around the position of the author order. And I was awake, and I told her, "Oh no, it's cool." And I wanted to act all zen and cool about it, but I wasn't. I woke up at 2 at night, and I was like, you know what, I'm really bothered by this. I don't want to be the third author out of 20. So as I lay awake and I was like, okay, this bothers me more than I realized, I sent her a message and it's like, you know what, I take back and would you consider this really bothered me? She's like, yeah, of course, I was wondering why you didn't say anything. Well, I was trying to act all cool and zen, but I really wasn't. And it was helpful for me to realize that even pretending that something is okay when it wasn't is something I do. So to be honest and upfront about it.
I think that's something that a lot of women do.
Yeah.
As well. Internalize all your thoughts and then just say, okay, it's fine.
It's okay, but it's not.
Try to have this facade of getting that sense. Yeah, I think sometimes like really vocalizing your opinion is very important. Just inserting your
And Abby, going to your question about growth, I would encourage you to really think about where do you want to be in your professional organization or your community, and ask your advisor, like, can you introduce me to whoever is the committee chair, and may I be part of, how can I be part of this community? Email people and say, you know what, I really love your work, I'd love to be involved with whatever. But identify for yourself, where do I want to make an impact? Where do I think I can make an impact? And go for it.
Pat, how do you self-develop?
Yeah.
Loaded question. Everything you had said, it's really important for me to have a partner who listens to me, who can be a sounding board for me. So I do a lot of self-help books. I try real hard to read outside of my discipline so that I can look at the world through a different lens. So in everything that you had said, but what I'm learning more now about myself is I need downtime. Not only self-reflection time, but I need to get my head in a different space. So going to a jazz concert is really important to me because I might be frustrated at the beginning of the concert, but at the end of the concert, I'm like, this is the reason why I was angry. This is the reason why I felt like I wasn't successful in that leadership role. So I really try to separate myself from the organization. Does that make sense? And the last thing I do is I intentionally put myself in environments where I'm uncomfortable. It's hard for me to do that because I'm not a risk taker by any stretch of the imagination, but I do like to put myself in situations. For example, I just, within the last couple of years, I started volunteering at a clinic that worked with the homeless in Kensington. It's a really uncomfortable situation for me because I'm not quite sure what's coming through the door, but I've learned so much about myself by watching other people who've been doing it for a long time. Does that make sense to you? So that really works well for me to feel like I'm always learning. Yeah.
Perspective, what you basically said was, get out of the everyday context and then get perspective on it, just by being away from it.
Right.
I have another selfish question, sort of. So how do you do this all and work full time, have a family at home, a young family at home, and add on additional things?
You only do things that you really care about. You say no to, Warren Buffett says this, that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. So you prioritize your family, your specific projects that you care about, and the specific communities that you care about. That's it. Everything else, I'd love to, but I can't, but here's someone else. Use that opportunity to give someone else an opportunity.
Right.
Someone that
Pay it forward for the next person.
Yeah, sure.
But that's a hard lesson to learn, to say no.
It is hard.
Don't you think? I'm 59 and I still don't think I have it down right. But it's hard to say no. So I'm now saying I can do it, but not until next week. Or I can do it maybe not until next year. So I have these phrases that I use because I'm not really smart enough to think on the spot. So I use these phrases as a way to lean on, on how to postpone.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's lots of